In today's video, I'm going to break down some of the best opportunities for farming airdrops and yield within the Bitcoin ecosystem. This is really an untapped opportunity because while people have been yield farming on Ethereum for years now, the concept of Bitcoin DeFi or even just using Bitcoin within the Ethereum system to farm yield and airdrops is relatively new. A lot of the innovations for leveraging Bitcoin sidechains or Bitcoin rollups are just starting to come online, and this is really a burgeoning field where you have the potential to be one of the first users. And even though Bitcoin's total market cap vastly exceeds that of Ethereum or Solana, the number of people that actually just hold Bitcoin and don't do anything with it is significant. And that means that relative to some of the other farming opportunities, I do still think that some of these Bitcoin farms are much less saturated than, for example, if you were to start farming Eigenlayer or the next Eigenlayer clone that launches. Also, even if just a tiny percentage of this total market cap of Bitcoin ends up getting unlocked and used in DeFi, this could really push the valuations of projects that launch. And if you get a token allocation for participating in some of these projects in their early phases, it really could be a solid opportunity. And in fact, let's take a look at this tweet here from the Bitcoin ecosystem page on Twitter, because there's a lot of projects that are launching that also have some pretty solid funding, which is one of the things that we look for when we're trying to evaluate an airdrop opportunity. So I'm going to leave this down below. I'm not going to talk about every single one, but some of the ones that will be included in this video will be Corn, Mezzo, Unisat, Lombard, and Babylon. But all of these are potential farms and all of them have received a decent amount of funding. Now in this video, I'm going to break it down into two separate parts. Part one is going to be talking about the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem itself. And as you can see from this little infographic here, it is still new. There's not that many projects. So you still actually at this point could farm pretty much all of them. Then in part two, I'm going to talk about how you can use Bitcoin or wrapped Bitcoin within Ethereum DeFi to farm some projects there. Obviously, this market is a little bit more established and there's more projects launching. However, I do think that there's a smaller handful of projects that have the most potential that you might want to focus on, and I'll give you a few examples in a minute. Now, in terms of some of the cons of farming with Bitcoin, one thing is that the fees can be quite expensive depending on what you're trying to do and how many people are pushing transactions and paying for priority fees with Bitcoin. Also, if you have never done anything within the Bitcoin ecosystem aside from maybe just hold it in cold storage, then there is a little bit of a learning curve that you have to get over for sure. Sometimes the user experience within the Bitcoin ecosystem is not nearly as good as it would be, for example, if you're using dApps on Solana or Ethereum, but I believe that eventually it will get there. And if you can get over these initial hurdles, it's definitely a solid opportunity. Now, before you can get started doing anything, of course, you will need to have a Bitcoin wallet. A couple of the good ones would be the OKX wallet. The Unisat wallet is also another solid option. And even if you have just a Phantom wallet that is enabled for Bitcoin with two of the more common Bitcoin DeFi networks that you would need to use, Taproot and Native Segwit. But honestly, I would probably recommend setting up a Unisat wallet or an OKX wallet, potentially even both, because depending on which project you're farming, one of these two is probably going to be the best option. Now, this site right here, I recommend that you bookmark it because it is a useful tool for tracking the fees for transacting on Bitcoin, as well as the construction of Bitcoin blocks. Now, Bitcoin is a bit different than Ethereum because the blocks move much slower. Sometimes they can be a minute or two, sometimes they take over 30 minutes for the blocks to be mined. And while these blocks are being mined, people pay to be included in them. And then if they pay more in a priority transaction fee, then they will bump other users out. It's kind of similar to how it works with Ethereum gas fees, for example, but you do need to understand that since the blocks are slower for Bitcoin, sometimes your transactions will take a lot longer to confirm than they would if you're transacting on Ethereum or Solana. Now, another useful tool that you might want to bookmark if you're starting to farm within the Bitcoin ecosystem is this right here, Genie Data. This is kind of like DBank or Sonar Watch, where you can track your portfolio within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And this will include obviously Bitcoin itself, but then NFTs or inscriptions on Bitcoin, runes, BRC20s, and other types of tokens that are enabled with Bitcoin. So for example, if you hear people talking about ordinals, about runes, about BRC20s, and other types of tokens, those are all on Bitcoin, and you'll be able to track all of that with this. Anyways, let's now get into the best Bitcoin projects to focus on farming within the Bitcoin ecosystem itself. I want to start out by talking about Unisat because yes, it is a wallet, but also they do have a points system. You can earn points by making Bitcoin inscriptions. So there's a quick and easy little guide here. If you click on this button, it will bring you to the page where you can actually make those inscriptions. Unisat also has a marketplace for BRC20 tokens and other types of Bitcoin tokens. So I would recommend checking it out. And it is possible that if you buy and sell runes, inscriptions, ordinals, whatever, by using this marketplace, then it could help you get an airdrop from Unisat itself. Another project that will be doing an airdrop is Magic Eden, and you can trade on the Bitcoin network using Magic Eden. However, I would say they just literally announced that their token is coming soon, and I'm not sure if it's too late. It's possible that they might have multiple seasons, so when they confirm that, it could still be an opportunity to use the Magic Eden marketplace to trade some of these same tokens that you can trade on the Unisat marketplace. I guess I should also say at this point that if you're gonna buy some of these collections, which is basically like Bitcoin versions of NFTs, a lot of them are actually quite expensive. And so depending on what your objectives are and how much money you have to allocate to farming with Bitcoin, you may or may not be able to actually buy and sell some of these collections. However, you can still do a lot of experimentation and accomplish a lot without having to purchase an expensive Bitcoin collectible. For example, some of the top coins on Bitcoin, like the pizza token, you can buy lots of for relatively cheap. Now, the only other project within this world of Bitcoin inscriptions, ordinals, runes for a trading marketplace that is worth checking out at this point is Satflow. Now, in order to join and get early access, you will need to have an invite code. If I have any left, I'll throw them down below this video. But otherwise, I recommend going to their Twitter page, clicking on their most recent tweet, and then just scroll down in the comments until you find a code. If there's a sketchy looking link, don't click on it. Just copy an actual code, bring it back over to Satflow, and paste it in until you find one that works. You also may get some points for the Satflow airdrop based on the history of your wallet. But aside from that, what you need to do is just stay tuned to their Twitter page and check it out for announcements on their launch. They also have a solid amount of funding, just under $8 million, so it's a decent project to keep an eye on. All right, next, aside from these marketplaces for trading different tokens on Bitcoin, there's also Bitcoin sidechains or Bitcoin rollups, which are where the future of Bitcoin DeFi is going to occur. So let's talk about some of the better opportunities with that. Now, Stacks, which is the first Bitcoin L2, has already launched their token, but Stacking DAO does have a point system where you can actually rank up and potentially qualify for more rewards. And in order to participate in this airdrop, first you would need to have some STX tokens. STX is the native token of Stacks, which is what I just mentioned that they already launched their token. It's the fee token for the Stacks L2 on Bitcoin, but also you can lock it up to earn rewards in Bitcoin. The price of the STX token is variable, so there is some risk associated with buying some to participate in this airdrop. While it is linked to Bitcoin, it is definitely not one-to-one correlated in terms of the price movement. Anyways, if you decide you do want to participate, you need some STX, then you can bring it over to Stacking DAO. And if you stake it or deposit it with Stacking DAO's liquid staking protocol, you receive STX, which accrues in value along with the rewards for doing that. And then you can go further and use that token in DeFi to get points boosts and additional yield on top of that. So if you want to check this out, this is one of the biggest projects within the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. As always though, please do your own research before aping into stuff like this. My goal with this video is just to present you with some of the best opportunities, and then you should pick and choose which ones seem the best to you. All right, another Bitcoin DeFi opportunity is with Zest. They have some funding, about $3.5–4 million, and they're backed by Binance. Basically what this is a money market or a DeFi app where in theory you can actually lend your Bitcoin or borrow against the value of your Bitcoin in a decentralized way. This protocol is also launched on the Stacks L2 or Bitcoin rollup sidechain, whatever you want to call it. And they do have a market for a few different assets within the Bitcoin ecosystem. As you can see, all of these assets are on Stacks, and soon they're going to be launching the Bitcoin market itself. But still, this is a perfect opportunity of where you can potentially hit a multi-airdrop qualifier, because let's say you're farming Stacks, then you can take your STX, and then bring it over here, deposit it, earn a small amount of additional yield, and then you can use that as collateral if you want to use leverage. Another option here though is to provide stablecoin assets in order to earn a solid yield on that stablecoin, although then you wouldn't be able to use that as collateral. Anyways, Zest also does have a points system and will probably drop their own token at some point, so another solid one to check out. And by the way, since I've been talking about all of these different tokens on stacks that you might need in order to participate in these airdrops, BitFlow is an option for where you could actually get some of them. It's a decentralized exchange and it's on stacks as well. And this is where you could pick up some of these different tokens if you wanted to try out DeFi on stacks. And the reason why I think BitFlow is great is because it's a DEX aggregator, which we have in Ethereum and Solana as well. There are other places where you could make swaps on Bitcoin. However, BitFlow aggregates all of those together and in theory should give you the best rates. Now, whether they themselves are going to drop a token as well, I'm not sure, but the more protocols or apps projects that you can interact with in the Bitcoin ecosystem, the better. Okay, next, let's talk about Babylon. Now, this is one of the biggest projects. They have some of the most funding, almost $100 million in funding for this Bitcoin staking project. They're backed by Binance, Polychain, and a bunch of other tier 1 players in the ecosystem, and they literally just launched yesterday. However, they have a staking cap of 1,000 Bitcoin, and that got filled almost instantly. Personally, I did try to get into this. I did try to make a deposit of 0.05 Bitcoin. However, the transaction fees for Bitcoin spiked just after I submitted my transaction. And unfortunately, I didn't get actually through the mempool in time, so my transaction wasn't one of the ones that got confirmed in this TVL cap. So I am currently in the process of unbonding this Bitcoin. I have to wait a week, then I'll be able to withdraw it and do something else with it. Now, even though the caps are full, the reason why I'm mentioning this right now is because it is still potentially a solid opportunity, and there's a few different ways that you can farm it. Either you could wait until they raise the caps, because I'm sure at some point that they will, or you could take some Bitcoin and try to get it into one of these other basically liquid staking providers that did get a bunch of Bitcoin in, and you might be able to actually farm multiple airdrops at the same time, including Babylon, but some of these other ones as well. So for example, Lombard is one of those options where you could get access to Babylon as well as potentially get something from Lombard. However, this is waitlist only. Chakra is currently open for deposits. However, their confirmed TVL is not massive. So if you're worried about TVL size, 22 Bitcoin, it's nothing to scoff at, but it's definitely not huge. Other options include Kinza or potentially Lorenzo, although the caps were filled for this as well. So really there's a lot of demand for participating in Babylon Bitcoin staking. And I guess my recommendation would be to check out these different projects, keep an eye on them, and if caps get raised or if the waitlists get removed, then you might have an opportunity to get into sort of the second batch of Bitcoin staking. And I just want to address something up front. While a lot of these projects will say, there's no expectation of rewards, blah, 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 there is a point system, and I think there is definitely an expectation that by locking up and staking your Bitcoin, then you will get something out of that. Anyways, we're not done talking about Babylon completely, because when we move to the Ethereum ecosystem, there are actually a couple of opportunities to farm it there as well. But before we get to that, the final thing that I wanted to mention is fractal Bitcoin. Now, this is one of the most hyped new narratives coming for Bitcoin. It's currently in testnet. It's not necessarily confirmed that participating in the testnet will actually be incentivized, but it's pretty low effort, low risk in order to do so. So this project is actually owned or run by Unisat. And this is a new Bitcoin scaling solution that's gonna have a lot of different apps and projects that launch on it as soon as it goes live on mainnet. So it's good to get in early for sure. Now, in terms of participating in their testnet, experimenting with it, I will leave down below a link to a Twitter thread that walks through step by step exactly how you can do that. I'm not going to do it here in this video because honestly, this is already going to be a super, super long video, but it's pretty simple. All you need is a Unisat wallet, go to their testnet faucet, get some tokens, and then do a few things with it. So I'll leave that thread down below. All right, now let's move to talking about Bitcoin on Ethereum, because as I'm sure you're aware, you can bridge Bitcoin to Ethereum or wrap it by using a few different applications. And then once you have it over there, there are a lot of things that you can do with it. And some of these projects are airdrop Legos where you can hit multiple different pieces of airdrops or yields all at the same time with the same pool of capital. Now, in order to participate in these Ethereum Bitcoin projects, you're going to need to first obviously get some Bitcoin on Ethereum. Now, there's a few different ways that you can do this. You can either mint your own by depositing or bridging from Bitcoin to Ethereum, or you can just go on Ethereum to a decentralized exchange, something like Uniswap, and then just swap another token into it. If you're going to mint your own, I would recommend getting TBTC from the Threshold network. It's more decentralized than wrapped Bitcoin, which has had a little bit of controversy over the last little while. And by actually minting TBTC, you're basically supporting decentralization when it comes to using Bitcoin on Ethereum. But if you're not starting out with Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network itself, the other option is just to go to Uniswap or some other DEX and swap into it. Now, once you have Bitcoin on Ethereum, whether it's TBTC or if you decide you want to go for W wrapped Bitcoin as well, there's so many different things that you can do with it. I'm going to go through the opportunities now. One of them is to actually just deposit it with Mezzo. This is a solid DeFi Bitcoin project that has a point system that's going to offer you some yield and that has some solid backing along with a decent narrative. Another potentially interesting opportunity is to go over to EtherFi and deposit TBTC into one of their vaults. If you do this, you'll be earning multiple airdrops at the same time: EtherFi Season 3, Symbiotic, and Veda points, and also you'll keep your exposure to Bitcoin. You can also go directly to Symbiotic themselves. However, I would say the other option with EtherFi is a little bit better because you have airdrop Legos and multiple opportunities at the same time. Now, Swell is accepting deposits of wrapped Bitcoin in order to get SWBTC. In this case, you can't use Threshold T Bitcoin, but it's still potentially an opportunity. This one is going to give you points for Swell's round 2 airdrop as well as Symbiotic. And honestly, between these different Bitcoin restaking options, I can't tell you which one is going to be absolutely the best because it just depends on how much market share EtherFi captures versus Swell, how much value accrues to the different tokens that they're incentivizing you with. So it's pretty tough to predict. Maybe a good strategy is diversification. Anyways, let's move now to another completely separate and different opportunity to deploy Bitcoin on Ethereum, and that is with Solve. They have an airdrop campaign going on. They have a point system, and if you deposit Bitcoin and then stake that, you will be able to earn points for multiple airdrops at the same time. So for starters, in order to do this, you would need to get some Solve BTC. Now, in order to make a deposit for Solve BTC, you need to first have FBTC from Ignition. I know this is getting a little bit complicated, but stick with me here because this one could actually be one of the better options out of everything that I've discussed so far. So let's say that you minted some TBTC on Threshold and you have that on Ethereum. Then you could go to a DEX like Uniswap, for example, and get some FBTC. You could also actually get it directly from the Ignition page itself if you want to go directly to the source. Then once you have FBTC in your Ethereum wallet, come back to Solve and make a deposit into Solve BTC. Is that too complicated yet? Well, stick with me because we're not done yet. After you have Solve BTC, then you're going to want to go up here to solvebtc.bbn. And if you remember Babylon, which I was speaking about previously, this is where you can take your Solve BTC, deposit it or stake it for solvebtc.bbn, and that is going to give you points for Solve. It's also going to give you points for Babylon. And then as if that wasn't enough, then you can take the solvebtc.bbn that you have, and you could take that back over to Mezzo, make a deposit here to get an additional Lego on that airdrop yield that you're chasing, or you could actually take it over to Fuel. These guys I have mentioned before on the channel. They have a solid amount of funding and they're currently accepting pre-launch deposits. Again, please do your own research before going through stuff like this and depositing significant amounts of capital. But they do have a points program on right now, and they are accepting deposits of solvebtc.bbn, which you can see right here on the list of Fuel assets that are enabled for deposits. So that potentially what I just described is one of the better multi-airdrop qualifiers or Legos for Bitcoin farming on Ethereum. If we're going to do a quick recap, first, you're going to get some TBTC either by minting it directly or by swapping into it. Then you're going to want to go over to, well, you can actually use Uniswap to swap it into FBTC, or you can go directly to the source on Ignition and get FBTC. Then you're going to go over to Solve, sign up for their airdrop campaign, swap that for Solve BTC, stake that for Solve BTC.BBN, and then bring it over to Fuel or also potentially Mezzo and deposit it there. Whew. Okay, just two more final things that I wanted to talk about, two final opportunities. Another one within the Ethereum ecosystem is P-Stake Finance. This is also going to give you exposure to Babylon, but potentially rewards from P-Stake themselves. So if you wanted to take some Bitcoin and add it to this, that is potentially an opportunity. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention for farming with Bitcoin on Ethereum is Corn. This is a new Ethereum layer 2. They just literally launched yesterday. Bitcoin is actually going to be the gas token on this network, and they are also accepting pre-launch deposits. So as you can see here, I made a deposit with some wrapped ETH, but they are also accepting deposits in Bitcoin. And actually, Bitcoin is the asset that receives the most points when you deposit it. It gives a 2x bonus versus depositing other assets only get 1 or 1.25. So if you want to use Bitcoin on Corn, that is another potential target within the Ethereum ecosystem. Yeah, so in this tweet here from Corn, we can see the points multipliers, and using BTC, which when you deposit wrapped Bitcoin gets converted to BTCN, that is going to give you the highest yield for depositing into this project right here. A couple of final high-level points. Some of the better opportunities, honestly, I think are the ones that I described within the Ethereum ecosystem, because there's more airdrop Legos that you can hit. Although definitely I would say don't neglect the Bitcoin ecosystem itself, because there's more open ocean there, and as more apps and projects launch, there is a lot of possibility. In terms of the amount of capital that you would need to use to take advantage of a lot of these airdrops, I would say that you could probably range from experimenting with a few $100s to using significant amounts of capital, really with no cap on the upside. Many of the opportunities that I've just discussed may end up actually being linear in terms of the yield or the airdrops that they offer. So really, it's probably going to boil down to the amount of capital that you use to farm, the more that you're going to get out of it. Although, of course, there could definitely be surprises, especially potentially in the world of trading tokens on Bitcoin or interacting with Bitcoin marketplaces like from Unisat or Magic Eden. Those could have potentially higher multiples on the capital that you're using than, for example, just staking Bitcoin with Babylon. Anyways, this is going to be a super long video. Hopefully you found it helpful. It was a very solid learning experience for me because, as I've said before, honestly, with Bitcoin over the past several years, since I started in crypto in 2017, I've just bought and held it. But a lot of smart people in my Discord have convinced me to take a look at this. And now that I have, it's like I have seen a whole new world of opportunity, and I will definitely be focusing more on Bitcoin moving forward. So hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks for watching and have a great day.